And so it begins. In comes the seawater along the North Carolina coast. Down go the power lines as the wind picks up, while rain, sheets of it, pours onto city streets. Florence, long awaited, has arrived. In New Bern, north of Wilmington, they're already knee-deep in it. Waterfront parks are now under water. And all of this just since mid-afternoon.
Nearly 30,000 people in North Carolina already are without power, and that number is rising. The worst of the storm is not yet here, but these are the early warnings of the days to come. Surviving this storm will be a test of endurance, teamwork, common sense, and patience.
Though Florence is now a Category 2 hurricane, it's grown ever larger in size, and its wind still packs a punch capable of damaging buildings. But it's the flooding that's the real worry. Consider surging seawater may rise 4 meters.
Please do not let your guard down. The storm surge forecast associated with this storm has not changed. It has remained the same.
Mandatory evacuation.
A string of towns along the Atlantic are now under mandatory evacuation. All day long, police turned back anyone trying to get to the coast. Millions have fled inland. Some even tying down their trees before leaving, amid other structures nearby much more vulnerable. Up on higher ground, if only slightly, Dave Cannon, who survived Superstorm Sandy in New York 6 years ago and told us he's staying put for Florence.
Fasten everything down as much as you can, and then you hunker down and you know,
cross your fingers.
Prepare for the worst and hope for the best. I mean, that's the standard line right now.
But as the storm moves in and those who did flee are now packed into shelters, there's another worry. What, if anything, will be left when they get home?
That rain kind of deteriorates your foundation, wash your house away.
And so the fear grows. Likewise, the fury of Florence and the sense of doom that all of this is about to get much, much worse.
To that end, Andrew, emergency workers are on standby throughout the region. All that's really needed for them to be deployed is for the full force of Florence to strike, and that's coming up.
And Paul, speaking of emergency workers, I'm seeing the flashing lights behind you. Can you explain what's going on there?
Yeah, those are police, and what you can't see in the darkness behind them is a bridge over water to Wrightsville Beach, and that's one of the places that's under this mandatory evacuation. Mandatory evacuation does not mean you are legally bound to leave or forced to leave. You're just strongly advised to leave. Most people did leave Wrightsville Beach, but some people stayed. And for that handful of people still past those lights, over the bridge and on the beach, the police had 2 things to say. Number one, if this storm hits as hard as everyone expects it to, people are not going to go and rescue them. No lives will be put at risk to save the people who decided to stay, number one. Number two, they took information for their next of kin, because it may well come to that.
Well, Paul, let me say this. I'm glad you're out there. I look forward to hearing more from you. I wish you all the best and stay safe. Paul Hunter in Wilmington, North Carolina tonight.
Thank you.
Now let's bring in meteorologist Johanna Wagstaff, who's been tracking this storm for us. And Joe, some of the strongest warnings have been about the storm surge and flooding. So can you walk us through those concerns?
Well, Andrew, the threat of storm surge hasn't dropped just because the hurricane category got lowered. In fact, the millions of evacuations along the coastline are because of the storm surge threat, not because of the winds. Here's how it works and why storm surge is so dangerous. As a major storm churns over the ocean, the wind and waves push seawater out ahead of it, forcing a huge volume of water to pile up and push inland when it gets to shore. How much depends on the slope and the shape of the coastline, along with the size and intensity of the storm itself. The larger and faster the storm, the more water is whipped up. What we know about Florence is that its strong winds extend far out from the eye, meaning a greater area of water is being pushed forward. So what does that actually look like? When waters reach a meter high, driving is out of the question. It's enough to float cars down the street. When they reach 2 meters high, that's when it becomes life-threatening. This water is moving fast and it's full of debris. And when it reaches 3 meters, there's no escaping. The only option for people stuck in their homes is to get to a higher level. And that's what people along the entire North and South Carolina coast will be facing over the next couple of days. Florence is expected to slow down so much as it nears landfall that it's almost guaranteed peak storm surge will line up with at least one high tide. After that, the threat will become flash flooding as Florence continues to draw in moisture from the Atlantic. And that storm surge will keep that moisture locked inland. Andrew?
Okay, lots to watch for in the coming days. Joe, thanks so much.
You're welcome.